Hello and welcome to Two Idiots in Recovery. And we know why it's called Two Idiots in Recovery because we've spent about, and our guest star can
10 hours.
verify that, trying to get everything right. So getting him live where he is currently, and I'm sure he'll explain a bit more about it. So welcome to Two Idiots in Recovery. Our guest star is Tarmac Mark, otherwise known as Puss Number 3. Just kidding, Mark. Mark, would you like to introduce yourself?
It's better.
Introduce yourself, Mark.
I'm alcoholic.
Okay. Scotty, how are you, Scotty?
I'm all right, Phil. I'm
Sexy
okay.
Sexy Phil.
Let me just sexy Phil. Let me just explain quickly. The reception from in the brightness is not perfect, but like I said, we keep it uniquely great because it's so pure. We've got Mark here to come and share his strength on recovery and hope, and Phil's going to lead the direction for 5 minutes until I grab it back off him as usual. Phil.
Okay, I think, the first thing I'd like to know is, Mark, firstly, let me give you a bit of background on Mark. And Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So Mark's been a very valued member of the community within the fellowship.
Yes.
He has 16 years sobriety behind him, and he's everything is AA. Fellowship, sorry. Everything is
whole
fellowship. And he has done a lot of sponsoring. I know personally that he has gone out of his way to help help people through the book, and he certainly guided me extremely well, and I'm still sober to this day. So we're going to get an intake from Mark on what it's like sponsoring, what he's seen, what not to do, what you can do, all the bits and pieces about sponsorship and why we say it's so important. Because without sponsorship, you cannot go through the 12-step program. And the 12-step program is what gets you spiritual. You probably don't believe me, but try it and you'll see. So is that my 5 minutes, Scotty?
That's your 5 minutes. I said, grab it back. What we're going to do, we're going to pass it over to Mark so we can try and give you a brief understanding of every aspect where drinks took him and where being sober is took him now. So we'll pass it over to Mark and let him have a bit of airtime. Mark, thanks for being with me and Phil.
It's Phil, thanks Scott, and thanks for inviting me on the Two Idiots who know nothing, we know everything about recovery. I'm in Ireland at the moment, hence why we're on the electrical broadcast, a little bit about me. I was the youngest of a family of 6. I was always, when I look back now, I was always separated from the rest of the family. I sort of played on my own. I still had friends, but weren't part of the family. So when they say about alcoholics never feel part of, this was going on with me. From an early age. Didn't have any interest with my older brother. My half brother, who was older than him, I had a bit of interest because he was into sport. So I was one of them cute kids that went through life, and I was picking up defects from the word go because fear was probably part of this little fella's journey. Because back then they called it discipline, where if you stepped out of line, they made sure that that you would know about it. And my mum and dad were quite disciplinarians, and quite several times I crossed their path with stuff that weren't acceptable to them. So if you look at my childhood, I went through childhood like quite a physical, athletic kind of person. Was into all sports: golf, cricket, football, rugby, tennis, badminton, swimming, the whole lot. I lived on a tropical island off of Essex called Carey, and I used to love the summer breaks. Everyone went to the beach, in the half term and the summer terms if it was hot, and that was the place where I sort of hung out, and and everything was going great, and I never smoked. I didn't really was attracted to drink until that one time where my mate Adam turned around when I was about 12 and said, "Shall we get pissed?" None of my family had drink and drug problems. And the only recollection I could remember of people that got involved with drink was my Uncle Eddie, who stuck his car in a ditch out the back Brentwood, Essex way, and he was drunk. And I can remember thinking, he's a bit loud. And there was, and where I lived, it was on a road that took you to a shortcut to the Admiral Jellicoe pub on Canvey, and there was 2 people there that would constantly get pissed, and sometimes they'd wake me up in the middle of the night because they'd be arguing, and I'd look out the window and think, why do you want to be like that? But you know, at the age of 12, you know, I got drunk, and I remember my mate Adam bought a bottle of old English cider, and I went in there into the off licence, and I decided I wanted to buy 2 because maybe one weren't enough.
It never is. It never is, Mark.
I consumed it, and I ended up doing the toilet prep. You know, I was hugging the toilet, saying I'll never do this again. I ended up smoking that day as well, not only cigarettes but cigars as well. I turned into a thief. This is all just one episode of my first episode of drinking, and from then on, the gaps that I had in sobriety started getting shorter and shorter. And then I got into being a teenager. I wanted to go to the parties. And then I realised, you know, when I look back now, that I was always trying to be older than what I was. You know, if I could go to a party that was my brother's mates, I'd go to that party. Or if it was my half brother who was 5 years older than me, I could go there and get in. I'd get in. But the consequences of my drinking, you know, I was either being sick, I was either getting chucked out, I was either falling asleep, I was either wrecking their prize rose bush by peeing up it, I would either be wrecking fences and telephone boxes, and I'd get involved, you know, with the police. They would be called out, or I'd get into fights, you know. And it was always the next day syndrome of me mates walk into school and they'd say to me like, oh, why did you do this and why did you do that? And I really looked at them as though, like, fucking hell, just get off me back, will you? You're nagging. And then it led right up to I left school. And then I found a new bunch of friends who did like to party on the sesh.
Yeah.
And they were into drugs. And that sort of like appealed to me, you know. And it was all the flashlights. And at the time, there was a program on telly called Miami Vice. And that was all about, you know, drug cartels and blah, blah, blah. And I got into that. And then next thing you know, I'm dealing drugs. And this is an AA meeting, so I'm going to keep it about
It's a
alcohol.
fellowship.
It's about everything.
A fellowship meeting.
You speak from your heart. Just say what you want, Mark. This is your time.
Well, yeah, but it's I do respect this. It's it's about addiction, isn't it?
Yes.
Anyway, I started dealing. I ended up like finding quite a lot of money in that. And then I remember the police were after me because I was being tipped off at another pub up the seafront saying that the CID had come in and they were making inquiries. You know, and I'm 18 years of age, you know, and I'm getting pulled up regular by the CID saying like, where you going, asking me all kind of questions, la la la. And I think I had a do or don't I moment. Do I want to follow a criminal path and maybe get caught and go to prison, or should I just concentrate on getting a career? And I went for the latter. I went for a career, and I got into construction. I was working with a load of Irish people on a cable job, and they would drink in the lunchtime, and so would I. And this all like led on to my drinking, and I got married. And she knew about the cannabis smoking because I was a stoner really through most of my 20s. But then all of a sudden, like what they talk about in the fellowship, you know, he stopped working. You know, smoking hash stopped working. I just didn't get anything out of it anymore. Smoking a joint was like smoking a fag. And I decided at the age of 30, I think it was May the 1st, 2000. I ain't going to smoke pot no more. And look, what I didn't know was my addictive behaviour needed a fix. So the drink, which was sort of like still there, I switched to that. But it wasn't long before I switched to other stuff that allowed me to stay up and drink more, you know. And I was getting on the Class A, the A drugs, and it was ruining me. And, you know, this man who liked to be out of control, all of a sudden, somewhere along the line, this stuff that let me be out of control was now controlling me, and I didn't like it. And I tried so many times to like put it down. And I can remember driving to work saying, "Why did you do it? Why did you do it? La la la. Why did you not come home? You know, you pissed her off. I've got 2 kids. You know, I've done all the things that when, you know, people have their kid, I'm going to stop this now, la la la." But it was too powerful. It was more powerful than me. It was controlling me, and it was taking me down a route where I was going to die. And
right, Mark,
enough,
for a second,
my ex-wife.
For a second, sorry. When you said about controlling you, just want to hit on that for a minute. What do you mean by controlling the substance had a control of you? In what aspect? Can you just elaborate on that a little bit more, if you don't mind?
Yeah. Well, I could pick and choose when I wanted to do my entertainment drugs. You know, I'll go out with the lads, and I had a choice. I'll wake up in the morning and I might have an hangover, might feel a little bit of a guilt because I never came home, but I could put it down. I could put it down for a good period of time. It weren't controlling me. I could concentrate because I run a business. I could concentrate on running the business and all that kind of stuff. But there is a time where you give it, I've got to knock this on the head. And I can always remember one night I had a bit of a weird physical experience where I thought, that's it. You're going to have a heart attack now. You're going to die because I couldn't control my temperature. That was fluctuating from hot to freezing cold.
Okay.
It was random and it was happening like every minute. And I thought, this is it. You know, and I can remember looking up to my higher power and saying, you know, don't let me die a drug addict. I just didn't want my kids knowing that their dad was a drug addict and he's going to die through drugs. And it went, you know, God knows how much alcohol I consumed. And then the next day, you know, this is how powerful the drugs were and the drink. The next day, I'm back on the phone to the dealer.
Back on it, the insanity of it, Phil. Insanity.
I didn't feel like I had a choice. You know, I would get so avidly depressed about my life and morbid that by chopping up after even like a few days, I'd have to have my fix again because I just couldn't cope with life. And that's where that was now controlling me. I couldn't shake the come downs, the cold periods, the low self-worth and low self-esteem. I couldn't control that no more. It was controlling me. I don't know when that happened, but it crept in. And at first, the solution was top up, have some more, Yeah. But then there was a point where topping up wasn't giving me much joy. It was absolutely
tiring.
I remember waking up in the night thinking, fucking hell, what was all that about last night? Because, like, you know, you were having a shit night and you had everything that you possibly could have. You know, you had your alcohol, you had your drugs there, you was out with friends that done all of that. And what were you doing? You was having a horrible time. So why do something when you're having a horrible time? But
repeating the same thing.
It grabs you. Your illness grabs you so badly that he says, you got to have a drink.
Baffling.
And then the drink leads to other stuff.
Baffling.
Definitely.
Powerful.
Baffling, powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and in recovery, we learn that thing. And then one thing it doesn't tell you in a book called The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it tells you cunning, baffling, powerful, but it doesn't tell you that your illness is patient as well.
We're going to hit on
my illness compounds on me today, and you know, Phil did let out that I'm 16 years sober. Yeah, fair enough. But you know what? It means absolutely sweet FA. If I stop doing this stuff, you know, I'm still 3 foot from the ditch as someone who's 16 hours sober. So having 16 years is good. It's not guaranteed. You know, I don't get a certificate saying, oh, well done, Mark, you're 16 years sober. Off you go. You don't have to do any kind of recovery and work your recovery anymore.
Well, ask them about the allergies.
Anymore. You know, they creep up. And, you know, my demon, that I've named my illness, he's cunning. You know, he'll turn around and say to me, like, oh, well, you know, this is going on. Why don't you have a drink? You know, you don't waste any time anymore. In the early days, it was, I had to keep it simple. I had to keep my program completely simple. And I'm lucky I'm in a fellowship that's got a program, you know, and I have a step program where I can analyse stuff. I can ask myself, why is that affecting me? And that's where I came in. You see, this is where I come in. 27 years of drinking and what? 19 years of being unclean, you know, going with the drink as well, and then coming in through the doors and having to keep really simplify stuff, you know, like a friend of mine says, who's also in the same fellowship as myself, who says, get your head on a pillar sober and the mission's complete. And that's basically what I have to do. But along that mission, and getting my head on a pillar, I've got to get a bit of treatment into my head because I'm a mental defect. You know, I've got mental issues, I've got control issues, I've got patience issues, I've got tolerance issues. You know, I've got loads of defects in me, like low self-worth, you know, self-esteem, you know, and all that kind of stuff. Things that can rock me. And when I look at it, these things that rock me, it's not my spirit that's being rocked. It's the human material of this body with what I call my spirit, which exists up here in a physical machine. And sometimes that physical machine, my emotion, can affect my thinking. And I have to search for something other than me to sort of like bring me out of that. Now, sometimes, like a sponsor that I have, he would say you need to sometimes talk to other people that their spiritual flame might be a lot bigger than what yours is. And I remembered that early in recovery. He said, because what happens if you put a candle next to another candle that's shining brighter? It lights. It becomes light itself. It's the same with a fire. You can have a branch burning and put a twiglet next to it, and all of a sudden that starts burning as well. And he called it the spiritual flame. And he said, stick close to people that have got that spirituality. And I did. And I did. And I'm glad I did. And I'm glad I came through the doors into a fellowship that practices recovery all the way around the world, because I can be anywhere I like.
Around the world.
And I know for a fact I can find a meeting. And for that, I sponsored someone who was in the army, and they were being posted to the Falkland Isles. And I got him up to his, what we call in our fellowship, his step 4. And he wanted to do his step 4. He said, because I'm going over to the Falklands, they're all going to be getting on it. La, la, la. He said, and I need to focus on something, because he said, I'm going to be there for 6 weeks. And I went, well, let's have a look. See, there was a meeting in the Falkland Isles, which we both thought there ain't going to be. Every Wednesday at Port Stanley at 8 o'clock, there's a meeting for people in addiction. And that's what I love about this fellowship. And slowly, I learned the triggers. Slowly, I learned that I've got a mental illness that tells me a solution to none of my problems is to pick up a drink or a drug. And today, I don't have to do that. But I still have to treat this, my mental illness, because my head can go off with the cuckoos. My head can tell me maybe I'm not an alcoholic or an addict. And my head will even look at the new drugs that are out there now and tell me that I'm missing out on things like crystal meth, and we look at the spice and all that kind of stuff that's out there now, and it's fentanyl. And, and I'm looking at these people all bent over in America thinking, fucking hell, look at them. I thought, you'd be attracted to that, Mark. You'd be attracted to that, because that is my solution. But when I'm feeling low, or when I'm having a shit day or a boring day, or even things going really well, I want to celebrate it. I want to come out of existence. And that's the thing that I love about today. I live in reality. I don't live in the past or the future. And I don't need something to change the way that I feel. And I'll finish on this. My tattooist, so he went to the pub one day, and a bloke turned around to him who he'd done a tattoo for, and he said, hello, Steve, let me buy you a drink, la, la, la. And he went, oh, yeah, I'll have a pint of orange juice. And the bloke turned around and went, no, I'll get you a proper drink. And he went, yeah, I want an orange juice. He went, well, then you want like a pint? I was saying, I want a pint of lager. And he went, no, he said, because I like who I am. And the bloke went, well, I like who I am. And he went, no, you don't. He said, because why are you drinking that alcohol? He said, because it's changing the way that you feel. This bloke's not even in the fellowship. And I thought, oh my God, I'd heard that so many times about people changing the way that they feel. And my demon would grab hold of it and go, oh, fuck off, they just want to get on it, la, la, la. But the way he explained it to this bloke in the pub, and I went, bloody hell, Steve. I said, this is what they talk about in the fellowship. He said, well, it's true. He said, if I have a few pints of lager, it changes the way that my mind's going to think and how I feel about people. He said, no, I can turn nasty over that. He said, but if I have an orange juice, I'm the same person as who I am today.
And you're enjoying the orange juice.
Don't get better than that.
No,
Okay, yeah, thanks, Mark. That was it's quite a powerful story. I think we should go more into the sponsorship side of things now. So, I mean, how many people do you think you've sponsored in your 16 years of sobriety? Firstly, just to let people know who probably don't, is that you have to go through the 12-step program before you can pass it on to others. So, Mark, you obviously went through the 12-step program. And from that point, how many sponsees do you think you've had?
I sponsored someone. I was just over, I think I was about a year and a half sober when I first started sponsoring. And I've got to pick you up on you have to do the 12-step program. There's no have to do anything. It's suggested that you do a program. like jumping out of an aeroplane. It's suggested that if there's a parachute on attached to you, it's suggested you pull the cord because it's going to save your life. And that's how the 12-step program was described to me. But it's not a has to program. It's a do you want to do this? It's going to save your life. And sponsees, I don't know. I really don't know how many that I sponsor, and I know I've got sponsees that are sponsoring sponsees, and I know them sponsees are sponsoring sponsees, and they've got a shitload of sponsees. And do you know what? It's like one big mega family, and I've got a sponsor, and he's got a sponsor. I'd say to anyone who picks a sponsor, make sure they've got a sponsor, because it's a lovely network of problem solving.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing that I like about sponsoring for me is when I sponsor a newcomer, the newcomer reminds me of how twisted their heads are. You know, not that the problems that they have might have been the same problems what I had early in recovery, but the way that they think, the way the self grabs hold of stuff, and, you know, the poor me syndrome. You know, and I had this, I don't know, about 6 months ago, I phoned my sponsor up. I find that I don't have to phone my sponsor up as much as when I did early in recovery. Early in recovery, I was probably phoning my sponsor 3 to 4 times a week. You know, but as it goes on, you start trudging this recovery because you want to do recovery, and then you find you less and less do you need to use your sponsor. But the big ones that come up that are going to rock you, I've got to pick the phone up.
So
I've got to pick the phone up. I've got to speak to my sponsor.
Let me just ask you a question.
I don't know, about 6 months ago, I phoned him up. Everything weren't going right for poor little Mark. Blah, blah, blah. So he phoned his sponsor up, had a little rant on the phone, this going on, that's going on, no. And all he said was, sounds like you're in Pity City.
I was about to say that self-pity is a nightmare.
Completely changed my attitude. It made me laugh. It made me look at myself that Mark was in Pity City, but it was all about Mark. And he just took me back to, you know, I just got to go through the basics. I need to do a gratitude list. You know, I need to be grateful today. You know, there's loads of stuff on the news now that continue to morbidity. You know, there's everything, all these wars going on. I'm not in it. You know, I've got to be grateful. I've got all of my senses. I can walk, you know, and there's loads of people out there, loads of examples you can see. People, like when I go walking, I only said it to Katie, my wife, the other day. I said, you know what, the amount of people that are in a wheelchair that can't walk along these routes because they're too rocky and I said, you know, it's just searching for the gratitude. It really is. And sometimes when a problem hits, I have to turn it into, could be worse. You know, and you get these old wives' tales, you know, they say, oh, it could be worse, you could be at sea, and I can sort of see that meaning now, you know, that when things go wrong for Mark, then Mark has to say, well, it could have been a lot worse, you know, the van could have blown up and blah, 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 it's only a flat tyre and all that kind of stuff. But sponsoring people, very important.
Okay, and so, Mark, can you give me your best example of sponsorship and your worst example of sponsorship? Or what would you say is your best moment in sponsorship, and what would you say is your worst moment in sponsorship, if you have an idea?
Oh, okay, I can definitely say the best part of sponsorship is Mark had certain views in recovery, especially to do with, like other people, the way they worded stuff. He had a simple one. People say they're recovered alcoholics. You know, I can see their point now, why they say it. But back then, I used to come into meetings telling everyone that I was a recovering alcoholic because we never recover from this illness, but they state they recover because they've not got the obsession of the mind anymore, or the yearning of the body, blah, blah, blah. Fair enough, you know, but at one time I totally disliked that until come back to the bloke who we looked for the meeting in the Falklands. I can remember because it does say in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it does say that we recovered from this illness. And he turned around and said it, and I remember picking him up and saying, look, mate, the way I look at this is I'm never recovered from this. And he turned around and said, yeah, but he said, I need to hear that. He said, because I need that hope that I'm going to be recovered from this illness that I've got.
The obsession.
And I thought, yeah, the obsession, yeah. And I looked at him and I thought, wow, this is a newcomer that needs to hear that word recovered. And you know what? I then went to a Brighton convention meeting, and I can always remember a bloke stood up and he said, recovering, recovered. Who gives a shit about that adjective name that we name ourselves? He said, I'm an alcoholic, and it's as simple as that. He said, and that's all I say is I'm an alcoholic. I don't get into that silly little debate. And that changed my mind on it, to be honest with you. And that was the best thing I think that I learned from sponsorship, is learning other people's angles on how they see their recovery. And the good thing about taking someone through the big book is you get their angle on powerlessness, you get their angle on insanity, you get their angle of their higher power. And that's the beautiful thing
as we go.
that you see in the recovery. What would I say the worst thing about sponsorship? For me, I don't think there's ever been a time where I've done sponsorship and come out and thought, fuck that, I'm not doing that again. I don't think that's ever happened to me in the whole 16 years that I've been there. I think when I'm trying to, I wouldn't call it full-on sponsorship, but when I've turned around to someone early in recovery and said to them, right, okay, we need to sober up first before I take you through the program. If they're constantly relapsing, then you might get a little bit of kickback in the meetings. He fucking sponsored me, la la la. Or he made me wait 3 months before he took me through the program. You know, fair enough, it's their opinion. And you know what? When I see them in there and they're stinking of Stella Artois, and I'm leading a very clean, simple, loving life, then I look at them and I feel sorry for them. They can say what they want about me. It's really none of my business what someone thinks about me. It really ain't. It's if they want to have their views about me, that I'm a crap sponsor. I mean, I will finish on this. I've had quite a few people that phone up and say, look, Mark, I'm not waiting 3 months, or I prefer the CA program, or I've got this other sponsor and he's going to make me do the work, blah, 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 because obviously he doesn't like the way that I sponsor. They're very shocked when I turn around and go, okay, well, fair play to you. You know,
what they expected.
As long as you're doing the program, I'm behind you. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I thought you'd lose your temper with me. And why should I do that? I'm sober at the end of the day. My sponsees don't do, and I remember I heard this at a meeting on Sunday night at Lion Walk. The bloke turned around and said, if my sponsee lies to me, if my sponsee tells me he's not doing the meetings, as many meetings that I want him to do, or he's not praying, or he's not talking to his sponsor, or he has relapsed, la la la. He said, so what? He said, I'm sober.
Yeah.
And then that's I'm the one who's benefiting. If he wants to lie, let him lie. You know, if he's going to benefit that way. And I thought that's a lovely way to look at it. You know, I've just got to concentrate on me. And you'll hear it in the rooms. They turn around and people get a little bit low self-esteem. I don't know if I'm doing it right and all that. And the question, they turn around and say, are you still sober? And they say, yeah. Well, then obviously you're doing something right.
Mark, there's a few things that you said in there, and we spoke about quite a lot in regards to getting your head on the pillow. It doesn't matter what you're going through. If you get your head on the pillow, you're guaranteed a new day. You kind of hit that a little bit. And also, I just want to touch on a bit when you said little words such as you've got your head in the toilet being sick because of the consequences of drink, not handling it.
Yeah.
I like to, the question that you were going to ask about the allergy, the compulsion to drink and stuff like that. Could you explain a little bit about that, if that's okay? The allergy, the compulsion and things like for people that are unaware.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Right, okay, we've got the obsession of the mind, and we've got the compulsion, the phenomenon of craving when the drink goes down. The simple one, when the drink goes down, anyone can play that experiment. Put a drink down into your system, okay? I heard this once, which is a very valid point. Alcohol's classed as a downer drug. It's meant to make you somber. It's meant to make you relax. It's meant to make you really chill. The only thing I can resemble that to is when I used to smoke a spliff. I used to feel really relaxed. The day's gone and I'm sitting there with my cup of tea and my reefer, la, la, la. And I just want to watch a bit of telly, have me tea, la, 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 and then go to bed. That's the same with a drink. I've seen people post on Facebook a glass of red wine and going, oh, I'm home, la, la, la. They have that drink. They feel nice and relaxed. They might even be able to have 2 glasses of wine and feel relaxed. But at some point, if you want to keep topping that glass up, they're going to turn around and say, I don't want no more. Now, I ain't got that power because they're feeling really chilled. Their head will tell them, if you keep on drinking, you're going to be sick, or you're going to start feeling spinny, or you're going to get tired and fall asleep, or even worse, you're going to feel out of control. So the hand goes out. I don't want any more because they feel really chilled and relaxed.
Yeah.
With an alcoholic, Soon as that drink goes in my system, whoa, I'm waking up. Where's the next one? Okay, and have I got enough to do through the night? Because the compulsion's been set up soon as I've had that first drink. My body will yearn for that acetone out of the drink. It yearns for it. It says, I need more. I like this feeling and I want to get higher. So I'm not normal. Normal people feel relaxed. I feel high. I feel, let's go where the party goes. And I want to drink more until I'm basically going to crash out and fall asleep. Now that is the compulsion to drink more. I've got the phenomenon of craving. As soon as a drink goes in, all bets are off. Now, when you get to an alcoholic, he's got an obsessive mind about it. And I heard someone explain that very well. And I'll explain it to me. When I used to work in London, laying the tarmac, I used to come out of, especially on a Friday, I used to come out of London and all of the people that worked for this same firm used to go for a drink in a pub called the Halfway House. And I wanted to be at the Halfway House. And I would drive all the way back to the yard. And do you know what? Everyone got in my way. And I was irritable. I was discontent. I was angry. Like, get out of the way, get out of the way. And this would carry on all the way back to the yard. I'd have to tip up whatever I had on the back of my lorry. And I'd be screaming at me labourers, like, yeah, come on, get it out. I need to go. No. Jump in my car. The pub was 5 minutes from the yard. I'd drive 5 minutes to the yard. Everyone out on the A127 was getting in my way. And I was like, yeah, I'll be overtaking people on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, zigzagging through traffic. Get to the Halfway House pub, get out, walk to the door. As soon as I open the door, see the barmaid, anger's completely gone. Am I irritable anymore? No way. I'm looking at Becky, the barmaid. I'm saying, 2 points. She'd say, hello, Mark, how are you? Okay, yeah, I'm fine. Now, experiment. No drink's gone in me to change this obsession of the mind. As soon as my mind knew what I was getting, and it's the same with drugs, I'd get irritable, discontent. Where's the Charlie dealer? Where is he in that little 3 Series BMW? He said he was 5 minutes ago. I'm getting fucking tired, irritable and discontent with the cocaine dealer. But as soon as he came round that corner, here he is. He's here.
Yeah.
All of the anger had gone. So the obsession was caused by me because my brain wanted that fix. Why did it want that fix? Because I'm an addict.
Yeah.
Because I'm an addict. It wanted to feel that feeling of out of control, happy, celebrational. That's the whole thing. So I've got a brain that yearns for a fix because it's got this empty space in its body that's not filled. Why isn't it filled? Because it's all about Mark. And why is it all about Mark? Because I've got an illness of self. It's got an illness of self that I have to treat it with drink and drugs to make that obsessional paranoia about myself that I'm not good enough. I'm separate from these other people. And I need to get on some kind of substance, don't care what it is, balloons, drink, drugs, don't care what it is, energy drink sometimes.
Change the way you feel.
The way that I feel. And it comes back to what that tattooist was saying. He enjoyed being him. So what do I do when I come into recovery? I have to discover Mark. What is it all about? And how am I going to do that? 12-step program. 12-step program tells me what it's all about. Tells me that I've got to admit that I can't win this battle with drink and drugs. It tells me that I am insane. One step that I really welcomed. I am insane. Why am I insane? Got no power. What restores that power? Power greater than myself. So what do I have to do? I have to just turn my will, gradually turn, like a screwdriver, just gradually turn my will over to a power greater than myself. How do I do that? Get rid of all the closet, all the little skeletons that are hanging about in the closet. Step 4, write it down. Step 5, own that shit. How do we own that shit? Right, we've written it all down. We're going to tell God all about it. But guess what? Let's tell a human being. Let's get the humility to say this is the person I was when I was a complete addict and alcoholic. No one's got a pre-story. Once I've done that, we then start to go through what are my defects of character, and once I can be aware of my defects of character, anger, patience, tolerance, jealousy, money, trust, la la la, and I've got all these issues going around and people taking advantage of me. Once I've got that all set down and I know what I've got to do, what's next? Well, I've got to cure my shortcomings. I need to go out there and self-check myself. It tells you that in our lovely book. You know, you do a nighttime reflection. Was I loving, kind, and tolerant? No, I wasn't. Do you owe someone an apology? Yeah, I probably do. Well, then fucking apologise. Then we have a list of people that we have to make our amends to. Mum, dad, brothers, sisters, friends, corporations, government offices, la, 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 police and all that kind of stuff. Clean it out. Get rid of it.
Sorry,
so I can
Mark.
focus on my day in sobriety.
Sorry, Mark, I want to interrupt you there just because we're kind of running out of time. But
There we are.
also, one thing that really stopped me from doing the program was step 4. And that's doing a fearless and searching moral inventory of yourself. And I'll never forget what you said to me. You said to me, write it as a life story. And because you never want to go and write it again. You never want to do step 4 again. And I was so worried, like, what am I going to write? What am I going to put? And if you recall, I ended up writing a whole book having over 200 resentments, you know, and mostly myself, to be honest with you. But it all came out from when I was a kid right up to now. And so because I was so desperate to do the work that I had to do step 4. And because I was told do it properly, I did it properly. And I think that was absolutely key for my sobriety. And then obviously making the amends to those people that I had hurt or had tried to support me and I disappointed and whatnot. So yeah, that step 4 is a big one for people. The God and step 4, I think are the 2 hardest ones to accept.
God is in that higher power.
As in the higher power, yeah. What do you say? Would you say those are the 2 hardest steps?
For me, I hear people talking about it, step 4, but for me, I think the ongoing work is step 6 and 7.
Yeah.
The amendments was hard. You know, I remember doing an amendment with the 2 worst amendments I had to do was with my mum and dad. And my demon was screaming at me while I was apologising for the stuff that I'd done because I weren't no squeaky clean son. And then my demon was screaming at me, I hope they're going to apologise for what they've done to you. And that never happened. And that I came out of that really bad and bruised because I felt like all the old defects things of you've come clean, they've not come clean, and why did you do that? You know, my demon was proper teasing me like, you prat, why did you go and say sorry? He don't give a shit about you, la la la, and all that kind of stuff. And it was hurtful, but luckily, again, got fellowship, phoned round 5, 6 spiritual people who all turned around and told me exactly what I needed to hear. Mark, you're cleaning your side of the street, not theirs.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Okay, so now let's get into some exciting stuff. So the book promises you a life beyond your wildest dreams. What are you doing right now, mate?
I'm sitting around Ireland at the moment in a motorhome with my wife, Katie. We've gone all around the south coast of England. We've basically ticked Wales. We spent a few weeks in Wales, like looking at some absolutely awesome sites. It's just epic, really. Hashtag epic, you know. And I'm living the dream. I'm taking, you know. And let's get down to that saying, living the dream. Yeah, I'm very fortunate, very privileged that I can do what I'm doing at the moment. But when I look at that term, living the dream, I've got out the nightmare. You know, I'm not controlled by drink and drugs. I can be a dad today. I can give my kids time today. I can say to someone when I'm going to phone you, I'm going to phone you. I can be a good friend. I can help people, which before would always be helping people with something in return. And I don't expect that today. So when I look at living the dream, once you break out of the chains of addiction, you're free. You're free to make your own choices. Yeah. And that, for me, is living the dream.
Absolutely. And you kind of alluded to the fact that you're in Ireland and done Wales, but you're on a 5-year trip, right? You're going to travel Europe. How long is that for?
We've not put a timeline on it.
Oh, wow.
You know, it lasts as long as it lasts. You know, my dream is to go to Scandinavia and do Norway, Sweden, and Finland. I even wanted to go to Russia, but Putin stopped me from doing that, and my wife.
Well, your wife can't. Your wife can't go anywhere. She's from Birmingham, right?
Oh, that's sore.
Yeah, she's a Brummy. She's brilliant. She's got a lovely attitude. And
I know.
she's sitting next door, allowing me to do this lovely podcast. But yeah, there's no time limit. It's just we get round it when we get round it. It's going to probably, hopefully, turn into a world tour. So that's the way that we want to do it. So yeah, I'm a very privileged human being, and I'm glad that I've got a loving wife. I'm glad I've got a loving God as well that allows me to do this.
Absolutely.
Mark, we're all like everything that you're doing now inspires everybody. We have a lot of groups like WhatsApp groups and people that you contact now. We see the videos, we see the laughter of yourself, and I can't ever picture you being the person that describes under drugs, drink, or anything like that. Because I've always known you sober, and you've always been big on do your service in the rooms, take it important, get involved. And one of my favorite sayings is, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And it's going back on everything, if you surround yourself, and you said this earlier, if you surround yourself with people in recovery, you've got a better chance. Because my old associates, none of them around, AA, so use the word AA, recovery, whatever you want to call it, you have to make it your life in order for it to work. And I see that with you in Katie, with your traveling, inspired to do the things that you do. He's a great person.
Well, I must be honest, Mark, the best thing about these videos that Katie's producing is you've saved me a lot of money, because if anybody says they want to go on a trip with me, I'll just say, watch these videos,
Covered everything.
Yeah.
But we are on time though, Phil.
Yes, we are on time. We do apologize for this podcast being so long, but as you can see, Mark is extremely passionate about the fellowship, and he lives it day by day, and he's basically out there living the dream, his dream. So we look forward to our next podcast, Scotty.
Definitely, and we are going to say, don't forget to subscribe and
like,
we need your
share. We've actually, he was talking so much, we actually forgot about it. I mean, we were quite mesmerized with what you had to say, but we have heard the story a few times, and you can see why Mark is pretty much involved. It was actually quite sad when he left to travel, but we're all happy for him. But he was certainly a main feature in the groups in the fellowship.
He always comes back.
But he always sends his crappy jokes, and so we're quite happy with that.
And say no more of that.
Anyway, Mark, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. Sorry the technology is not great, but look, we are two idiots in recovery, so it's what you would expect. And Arrivederci. What did they say? No, what's it? Arrivederci. Au revoir. That's it. Okay, well, thank you, Mark. Thanks for appearing, and we'll speak to you soon.
Well done, everyone. Stay safe.
Okay.
And yourself, buddy. Take care.
Thank you. I'm going to turn this off.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
What a fantastic share that was.
Yeah, I think that was great. Look, I mean, he did really get into the detail, which I wasn't expecting. So we didn't really have a chance to ask the questions, but I think that's perfect. And anybody that is listening will know that this is what you go through and what you need to do.
I am going to say something, though. Earlier, Phil was shh. Yeah,
because you wouldn't let him speak. You wanted to interact the whole time.
Wow, it's one of them, and that's why we keep it natural. There's no editing on this, and we're just going to get the pureness that's been thrown out. And Phil, you're a pleasure.
Man, Scott, thank you. I would just like to say, this last week, I got a tattoo. Wait, where's it? Here we go.
And he took it like a man.
And I didn't scream. And I'm heavily into my gym now. First podcast is that signed up. So things are going exceptionally well for me right now. I can't believe the change. Scotty, I mean, I didn't know you in the madness, so I can't really say the change. I just still think he's still a puss. But you don't know what I went through this morning trying to set this up. You have no idea. I can do a podcast on it.
Say, please subscribe and like and listen to this, and please give feedback. We need it, and we need new equipment.
One day at a time. Don't forget.
Take care,
Thank you.
guys.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.